I'm going to talk to you today about an absolutely horrendous and devastating disease that slowly and steadily destroys the brain, erases the mind, and the entire time, loved ones of the patient can only watch on helplessly as this horror unfolds. I'm talking about Alzheimer's disease. This is a quiet thief in the night that relentlessly robs from the patient first the sense of identity, personality, and ultimately the very essence of self. It's about the worst thing you can imagine facing after you've lived an entire life of wonders and experiences with your loved ones. And if that doesn't sound bad enough, I'm going to tell you that I've been in this field 35 years, and the bad news is we've been approaching this disease all wrong. We've made lots of mistakes. But luckily, there have also been many victories and many discoveries with those mistakes. And as scientists, the really cool thing about being a scientist is that the most important thing you can do is learn from your mistakes and learn how to do things better. And on that note, I can tell you that right now, based on our mistakes, the opportunity has never been greater to stop this disease in this next generation, in our lifetime, maybe even by 2025. And I'm going to tell you about this story, but I'm also going to tell you that families, patients, caregivers, loved ones, the medical and scientific communities, and especially the FDA, all have to talk to each other, work together, and listen to get the job done. By the time I'm finished speaking, I hope you get the same sense I do, that there's a lot of reason to be optimistic about the future of stopping Alzheimer's disease. So first, some facts. There are 5.4 million patients in this country today, and worldwide, there are 50 million. And that 50 million is going to be the number we have in this country by 2050 if we don't do something about this disease. Because right now, we're treating the disease with drugs that temporarily affect the symptoms modestly, modest benefit for a short while. Now, right now, the current lifespan is close to 80 years old. We're living longer than ever. But the problem is, our lifespan is now outpacing our health span, especially the health span of our brains. All of modern medicine has us living longer, but is our brain keeping up? That's what we have to face right now, or we're going to be in big, big trouble going forward. And that's because 40% of people at 85 years old have symptoms of Alzheimer's disease. So think about that. 80 is the lifespan right now. That's going to go up to 85. 40%, does that mean everyone born soon is going to have a 40% chance of getting this disease? Especially such a devastating disease? And right now, there are 71 million baby boomers like myself, all in one big group heading toward that risk age. Alzheimer's right now sucks up $1 in $5 of Medicare and Medicaid. And as these baby boomers age, that's going to jump up to 1 in 4, and then 1 in 3. And eventually, if we don't do anything about this disease, Alzheimer's will single-handedly collapse our healthcare system. Economically, a disaster. So this means that all of us have to work together to wake up and do something about it. Alzheimer's began with Dr. Alzheimer. Dr. Lois Alzheimer described the case of August Dieter, who was in a Bavarian asylum called Ehrenschloss, which meant Castle of the Insane. They weren't politically correct back then about what they called their institutions. He said she was a 55-year-old woman with memory loss, paranoia, delusions, hallucinations, and he noted in his journal that she was often found screaming in the middle of the night these words, "Oh God, I have lost myself." And that's what this disease is. See, all of your life, everything you experience is being recorded on 100 billion neurons or nerve cells in your brain, trillions of connections, creating a neural network like a tapestry, the tapestry of who you are, how your loved ones know you, your personality. Alzheimer's comes in and slowly rips apart that tapestry thread by thread, never resting until the tapestry's gone. That's what this disease is, and this is what you're hearing in August Dieter's words there. For 80 years, we only defined the disease by what Alzheimer described in her brain. You saw these plaques, these big boulders of clumps of stuff that was gooey and sticky around the nerve cells. He said the nerve cells were choked inside by tangles that were actually causing the nerve cells to die. And he also saw that the brain was reacting to all this pathology and cell death with inflammation that caused even more nerve cells. And for 80 years, all we could do was describe the pathology. So in terms of solving the disease, it's like aliens coming from space and wanting to figure out football, and they get to the stadium at 6 o'clock, and the game was at 1 o'clock. They find a helmet, they find a football, they find maybe some dug-up turf and cleat marks, and they say, okay, now let's figure out what football is. Right? You get some clues, but you can't figure it out. And it wasn't until the 80s and 90s when I was lucky enough as a student at Harvard to find the first Alzheimer's gene, the amyloid precursor protein. It makes the stuff that's in the amyloid plaques. We found more genes in 1995 called the presenilins, and there was another gene found called ApoE. And once these genes were found, now finally we had windows into disease. Finally we said we have some real clues that we could grab onto that might tell us how this disease is caused. And what one does with genes is you come up with drug targets. And I'll use an example first. In heart disease, we take for granted that you have to keep your cholesterol low. But did you know that that began with very rare families who had very rare genetic mutations that caused them to have high cholesterol? And when this was observed, the idea came about, hey, maybe cholesterol has something to do with heart disease. And now, of course, we all manage our cholesterol to avoid heart disease in our futures. In a completely analogous situation, what those first genes I just showed you from the 80s and 90s taught us was that our cholesterol, so to speak, in Alzheimer's, is something called the amyloid beta protein. We call it A-beta for short. And it's this little tiny protein that gets extruded from nerve cells. It comes from a bigger protein that gets clipped. So picture a piece of rope and you clip in 2 spots, and it gets extruded. And over time, if it starts to accumulate and form plaques, the idea is that that causes the disease. That's what all the genetics in the 80s and 90s told us. Well, so we tested that. The idea was, if plaques cause the disease, the plaques should cause the tangles. That's these twisted filaments that choke the inside of the nerve cells. They're made of a protein called tau, the Greek symbol tau. So we tried to put these genes into mice for 2 decades. You put in these Alzheimer's genes that make the amyloid plaques in the mice, and then you wait for the mice to get the tangles and the rest of the disease. And yeah, the mice get sick, but the mouse would have to say, my brain has lots of amyloid plaques, but no tangles. So this led to so much confusion. People were fighting back and forth. See, it's not the amyloid, it's the tangles. Is it the amyloid or is it tangles? What causes the disease? Amyloid, the beta amyloid protein was called BAP, so they were the Baptists. And then there were the Taoists. And they would fight, grown men fighting like children at meetings. And it was because we were doing experiments in mice. And many of us argued very simply, hey, you know what? We're not 150-pound mice. You know, maybe there's some difference between a mouse and a human. If you just kind of look at them, wouldn't it be nice to be able to use a human brain? Well, with the advent of stem cells, now we can build human brains in a dish. And this is exactly what my colleagues at Mass General did, particularly Dooyan Kim. He was able to take stem cells from human stem cells, create nerve cells, you see there on the side of the panel. And now, if you grow them in a gel, because the brain's like Jell-O, if you grow them in a gel that mimics the brain, the nerve cells start interacting and talking to each other and creating neural networks just like in a real brain. And if you put those Alzheimer's genes in, the same ones we tried in the mice, put those into the cells, and have them make amyloid, you see in the middle panel, that orange dot in the middle, that's a plaque. For the first time, you can make a plaque. A plaque was being formed in a mini little brain in a petri dish. Alzheimer's in a dish. Human brain organoids. But the beautiful thing was it took about 6 weeks for that plaque to form. 6 weeks versus, decades in a human. And if you wait a little longer, then you see the tangles, real tangles that kill the nerve cells, something we couldn't do in mice. And if you use drugs that stop the plaques in the dish, in the brain, you don't get the tangles. So this said to us, yes, finally, debate over, plaques cause the tangles. And that said to us, well, if we can stop the plaques, then we stop Alzheimer's disease. It's that simple, right? Well, we tried that, and the answer was nope. Every Alzheimer trial, another mistake, every Alzheimer trial that targeted the plaques failed. Whether you were trying to turn off the spigot, turn off the amyloid production, that's the brain overflowing with amyloid in the middle, or you tried to clear the amyloid out of the brain, every attempt to do so, no improvement in cognition in the patients. Failure after failure. And again, this led to arguments. See, the amyloid's not the right thing. And then we realized something because we had great breakthroughs in brain imaging. If you look up top, what you're seeing there is every time blue goes to yellow and red, that's showing where amyloid is in the brain. Now we can image and actually see the amyloid in your brain and get an idea of when the amyloid occurs. And what we learned was pretty striking. The amyloid's building up 10 to 20 years before any symptoms of dementia. 10 to 20 years. So if you follow that slope all the way to the left, you see the beta amyloid goes up, and then when it starts to flatten out, that's when there's dementia. It's already done its job. The amyloid's already built up and started the disease, and so then we're going in there after amyloid's already done it and saying, don't worry, we're going to lower your amyloid. Well, the horse is out of the barn. It's equivalent to this scenario here. This poor guy's having a heart attack, and the doc is saying, it's okay, you just need to lower your cholesterol, right? You had to do that 10, 15 years ago when you knew he was on his way to heart disease. You don't wait till the patient has symptoms. Imagine, and this brings up a point, imagine if we waited till someone had symptoms of cancer, organ failure, or waited till someone had congestive heart failure and a heart attack to say, okay, now you have cancer, now you have heart disease. Right? We don't do that. As soon as you have a small tumor, a neoplastic cell, we say there's cancer, we have to treat it. When you start to see high cholesterol and plaque around the heart, you say, yep, you're starting heart disease, we have to treat it. And so on. The same thing in AIDS. When you have HIV, you don't wait for symptoms of AIDS to say you have AIDS. But in Alzheimer's disease, we wait until you have symptoms to diagnose and treat the disease. It's like, how do we do that? How did that happen? In every other disease of aging, we stop it with early intervention, early detection, but in Alzheimer's, we diagnose only when you already have the disease, and then we try to bring you back. That was the big mistake. Amyloid is a good target, but you have to hit it early. Unlike heart disease and cancer, we don't treat the cause early enough. We need to stop those plaques 10 to 20 years before symptoms. We can use brain imaging and biomarkers now in people who are asymptomatic, or very mild memory problems, start to see whether there's amyloid in their brain, and that's when you treat. You don't wait until the horse is out of the barn. And I think this gives us great hope now that if we can convince the FDA that this is the way forward, and there are many safe drugs on the horizon, we're making them, others are making them, safe drugs and therapies that will bring that amyloid down, we have to lower the bar a little bit when we do trials. We can't expect you're going to bring somebody cognitively back by hitting a pathology that started the disease 20 years before. It's good enough to lower the amyloid. There's enough data now to say, come on, let's work together. Find people early on who have amyloid building up in their brain to alarming levels and bring that amyloid back down, just like we do with cholesterol and heart disease. That's the turning point right now. But like I said, medical, scientific community, families, FDA have to work together to make this happen. Now, many people ask when I get to this point, well, why do our brains make amyloid? Why did we make it in the first place? And this is where I want to tell you about a very exciting new hypothesis that has arisen based on new data, the pathogen hypothesis. And I don't have a lot of time to go into it, but it appears that our brains are not sterile. Living in our brains are bacteria, viruses like herpes, fungus like yeast. Especially as we get older, we're getting more and more little microbes and buggies living in our brain. And it turns out, based on the newest data that we have just published, that the plaques are actually there to protect the brain. When there's an infection, even a low-grade infection, the amyloid plaques form around the herpes or around the yeast or bacteria to trap it and keep it away from the nerve cells. It's trying to do a good job. But then if there's too many of those plaques, they trigger the tangles and the rest of the disease. So this says that not only can we tackle the amyloid early on, but if we can find out what types of microbes are invading the brain, we can hit those early on as well, antivirals, antibacterials, et cetera. The bottom panel shows a herpes virus, and then in just 30 minutes to 2 hours, you can see amyloid plaque completely enveloping that virus, and that's in a mouse brain or in the Alzheimer's in a dish. So that says that we also have to be careful. When we hit amyloid with drugs, we don't want to wipe it out. We just want to turn it down. And when this happens, I just want to show this one slide. That little red guy in the middle, you see the red guy in the middle, he's eating that green string coming out of the green blob. The green blob is a nerve cell, and that green string is its axon that goes to a synapse. And what happens is when you get this attack of amyloid and bacteria in the brain, those little guys called microglia go crazy and eat nerve cells. That's called inflammation. This is what you have to stop in patients who have the disease right now. We have to stop the amyloid plaques and tangles before you even get there. So now we have some idea of what to do with the right patient, right drug, right time. And in the end, what's going to beat this disease is early prediction based on family history, early detection with imaging and biomarkers, and early intervention. Stop that pathology before there are symptoms, just like we do for cancer, heart disease, diabetes. And we're going to have to do this all with a cocktail. We're going to need to hit the plaques, the tangles, the inflammation, all of it. I work closely with the Cure Alzheimer's Fund, working on all of these aspects. And I think we're making great progress. And I think if we work together, we're going to beat this disease. I've actually never been more optimistic that we're going to beat this disease if we just take the data that's in front of us and do the right thing now and all work together to make it happen. Now, on the side, until we have those drugs, what can you do? I like to use the acronym SLEDS. SLEDS. Not that you're going to slide down, but get 8 hours of sleep, learn, so come to TED, exercise, at least 8,000 steps per day, diet, Mediterranean is the best, omega-3 is very important, stress, try to meditate, very, very beneficial. So remember SLEDS, and that's what we can do until we have the right drugs. Now, as I end, on the side, I'm a musician. I play often with Joe Perry of Aerosmith, and I've played in the last Aerosmith album. This is Joe Perry on the Jay Leno show, looking very suave and like a rock star. And that's me in the back on the keyboard saying, what the heck am I doing here? I'm a geneticist. But it's fun. I also started a music app called Spark. It's a music therapy app for Alzheimer's patients, so I'd like to keep music in my life. And speaking of that, at this time, I would like to welcome to the stage my good friend, Chris Mann.
Thank you very much. I have a strong connection with Alzheimer's. Both of my grandmothers passed away with forms of the disease, and my paternal grandmother was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's in her late 40s. So it's always been a very scary part of my life. So I was very, very happy and excited to connect with Rudy, who I literally cornered at the TV studio where we met and demanded to learn as much about his research as I possibly could. Now, through our connection with music and Alzheimer's, we did want to write an anthem of hope to raise awareness. And the song is called Remember Me. We wanted to write Remember Me from the perspective of someone with Alzheimer's, so that other people could relate to how terrifying it is to live with this disease, and how crucial it is that we find a cure by donating proceeds from the sale of the song to Alzheimer's research. We were able to take action a step further with the help of Cure Alzheimer's Fund by producing a music video and visual art piece for Remember Me that very poignantly portrays the struggle of living with Alzheimer's through dance and music. Now, at the time, I was playing the Phantom and Phantom of the Opera National Tour, so I was able to implore my very talented cast and crewmates who had a connection with the disease to donate their time to the cause as well. Here you can see us on set creating the video, our dancer, our makeup artist, our hair department, my wife who directed, Laura. Everyone donated their time to bring this story to life. Here are some still slides from the video. You can see a young woman in white who's vibrant before the middle slide, which is when she starts to show symptoms, to the upper slide when she's fully lost in the disease. Now, what happened next is truly remarkable. When we posted our little passion project on Facebook and YouTube, it was sharing and being viewed at such a rapid pace that the live view counter could not keep up. People were sharing this video with their own Remember Me stories about their families, their connection to the disease, and a worldwide conversation started. You can see some of the press and some of the people sharing their pictures of their loved ones with the hashtag #RememberMe right there. In short, Remember Me struck a chord, an emotional chord with the community. It became a coping mechanism for families, and it really did become an anthem of hope. It was very, very, very powerful to see. So now, we would love to perform Remember Me for you now, for all the families dealing with this disease, and remind them that they will never be forgotten. I need someone to hold on for me, to what I can't seem to hold on to. The life we used to live is slipping through my fingertips like a thread that's unraveling. I suppose that nothing's worth forgetting, and everything is lost in its time. When I can't find the words that I'm trying to speak, when I don't know the face in the mirror I see, when I feel I'm forgotten and lost in this world, won't you please remember me? Remember me. I know there'll come a day when I have gone away, and the memory of me will fade. But darling, think of me and who I used to be, and I'll be right there with you again. I hope I'm one thing worth not forgetting. Tell me that you'll never let me go. When I can't find the words that I'm trying to speak, when I don't know the face in the mirror I see, when I feel I'm forgotten and lost in this world, won't you please remember me? Remember me. Remember me. Remember me. I hope I'm one thing worth not forgetting. Tell me that you'll never let me go. When I can't find the words that I'm trying to speak, when I don't know the face in the mirror I see, when I feel that I'm lost and alone in this world, won't you please remember me? Remember me. Remember me. Remember me.
Thank you very much. You never give up. Never give up.